Here's the part they're not admitting. Giving the show's face cancer isn't bravery, it's a ratings tactic, and it's painfully obvious. Is the network planning to coast on reruns for the rest of the week? Or is the audience expected to keep refreshing the schedule like it's a community service project? In the middle of that uncertainty, the episode does what soaps rarely do well without slipping into melodrama. It lets Anita Dupree sit with Andre's grief and actually comfort him. The moment lands, especially for anyone who understands what it means to lose a mother too soon. Which, naturally, is why the writing immediately pivots to the least subtle choice possible, handing the show's most visible anchor a cancer diagnosis and calling it drama. This is the same Anita who leads the opening sequence, the same Anita positioned as the face of the series, and yet the story tries to sell the idea that she might be written out. The smarter hope is also the likelier one: remission, recovery, and a storyline that acknowledges the reality without treating the character like a disposable lesson plan. Of course, the calendar insists on Christmas, which means everyone is required, by genre law, to gather, reconcile, and hug as if warmth can patch over months of dysfunction. Vernon and Anita are expected to visit, or the family will conveniently appear at their doorstep within days, because boundaries are not part of the holiday budget. Still, it is hard not to enjoy seeing the favored corner of the ensemble back in view: Martin, Smitty, Tyrell, and Samantha. The invitations and arrivals come with their own quiet politics. June included, Regina unexpectedly welcomed by Smitty, and an impressive amount of hugging that seems designed to reassure viewers that this is still, technically, a family. The episode keeps the room busy. Ted, Kat, and Eva show up. Kat ends up with Aunt Danny. Most of the Dupree orbit is present, along with Andre and Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob and Naomi manage to argue about a monkey water hat, an object that feels less like a plot point than a neon sign flashing "Mexico vacation incoming." Naomi's indignation is understandable for approximately one scene. After that, the story makes it clear it would prefer she stop being furious and get back in formation. To round out the seasonal chaos, the two families launch a tree decorating competition because nothing says peace on earth like competitive ornament placement. Then comes the part where the narrative leans on Ted's greatest talent, being confidently wrong. Leslie feeds him what she believes she knows about Vernon, and Ted, never one to let verification interfere with momentum, prepares to run it straight to Nicole. The result will be predictable. Nicole will dislike Ted even more, and once the real Vernon and Sharon secret surfaces, Ted will be left holding the soggy remains of his credibility. Even Tracy, during a singing lesson of all things, can see the smoke and asks Sharon what is going on with Vernon. When the chorus line is more perceptive than the surgeon, something has gone slightly off script. The frustration is not that the show has multiple families and storylines. It is that certain arcs are treated like optional programming, while others are shoved forward with repetitive urgency. There is patience for the return of the Martin and Smitty thread, and the teen lanes, Martin's re-election run, Smitty's intriguing looming story, Tyrell weighing college decisions, and Samantha's free clinic idea that Leslie is already trying to rebrand as her own. The pieces are there. The follow-through needs to match the ambition. As for Ted, the discourse pretending the old Ted would somehow speak with different words than the new Ted is almost charming in its optimism. The character is written to make the same mistakes, just with fresh lighting. The larger point remains: Ted never learns, particularly when he is listening to Leslie, and the show keeps rewarding his gullibility with more screen time. At this stage, it would be merciful to place Ted, Leslie, and Eva in one shared household and let them torment only each other. That would also create the rarest of soap miracles, peace for everyone else. And yet, the episode works emotionally, almost offensively so, by stacking genuine beats. Anita's diagnosis, Tyrell forgiving June, and Tyrell and Samantha reconnecting with Aunt Gigi. It is the kind of hour that can reduce even the most composed viewer into a sobbing spectator, because the writers actually commit to the feelings instead of winking at them. The scene with June, in particular, hits with precision. The show also deserves credit for handling the medical education with clarity. The explanation of triple-negative breast cancer through Dr. An is not window dressing. It is informative, direct, and respectful of the audience's intelligence. It frames the road ahead as difficult without turning Anita into a walking PSA. If this arc stays grounded, it is the kind of work that earns awards attention, Tamara Tooney included, because it asks for performance, not just plot. Still, the timing is almost comically cruel. Doing this right before Christmas is the narrative equivalent of placing a lump of coal in the viewer's chest and calling it festive. And while the episode leans into tenderness, it also sprinkles in distractions that beg for basic continuity, like Andre's gray and black sweater, which appears to be losing a war against basic fabric integrity. Finally, the loudest rumor gets a necessary correction. Vernon is not cheating. The story makes it increasingly clear that whatever he has been doing with Sharon is not betrayal, but something thoughtful, even romantic, an attempt at care rather than deception, which makes Ted's rumor-spreading crusade even more pathetic. A simple guideline would help. Mind the scalpel, mind the business, and stop treating hearsay like scripture, especially when it comes from people with a history of attempted murder and evidence hiding. If Leslie and Eva are going to be written with sympathetic shading, fine. But crimes still have consequences, and moral amnesia is not character growth. The episode proves the show can be sharp, moving, and socially relevant in the same hour. Now it just needs to apply that same discipline to its messiest habit, letting certain characters stay ignorant on purpose, as if stubbornness is a substitute for storytelling. The most dangerous villain in this episode isn't the cheater, it's the man who mistakes loose rumors for moral duty. Ted continues to perform a fascinating kind of heroism, the sort that requires no courage, no judgment, and absolutely no restraint. After generously donating his marriage to scandal, he now decides the noble move is to recycle gossip to Nicole, gossip sourced from the very clown car that already crashed his life. Naturally, there is no fact-checking, no discretion, and no awareness that repeating a flimsy rumor does not become integrity just because it is delivered with a solemn face. The result is predictable. Nicole is not going to reward messy incompetence with reconciliation. She is far more likely to cut him off entirely, leaving Ted once again on the outside, watching consequences happen in real time, looking startled that actions have outcomes. Leslie barely has to lift a finger to steer him, which says everything about how easily manipulated and how persistently weak this man chooses to be. At some point, misguided stops being a charitable description and becomes a permanent personality trait. And yes, family celebrations should come with standards. Ted, Leslie, and Eva have made an impressive case for being excluded until further notice, preferably with an usher and a locked door. Eva, meanwhile, delivers a masterclass in visible contempt when June tells Kat she is beautiful, because nothing says emotional maturity like looking physically ill at the idea of someone receiving a compliment. The expression alone is an apology waiting to happen. The corrective path is simple. Apologize sincerely, stop dragging Kat into conversations as if she is a convenient accessory to someone else's insecurity, and place the decision-making where it belongs, with Kat. Kat, in contrast, shows up with poise and restraint, the kind of composure that makes everyone else's petty theatrics look even more ridiculous by comparison. It is a relief when someone behaves like an adult in a room full of people auditioning for chaos. Then the episode pivots from avoidable dysfunction to something that actually matters. Anita's breast cancer storyline, including the explicit attention to triple-negative breast cancer and the reality that this diagnosis can disproportionately impact Black women. The emotional weight lands because it is grounded in the kind of fear that does not need embellishment. It also lands because it carries a public service urgency. Get mammograms, prioritize early detection, and do not treat serious medical results like a solo mission. Take a support person, bring a notebook, track appointments, write questions down, ask for clarification, and refuse passivity. Because healthcare is not a place for vague nodding and hope as a strategy. The episode is devastating, yes. and it may make future holiday week viewing feel like volunteering for heartbreak. But if this story pushes even one person towards screening, advocacy, or earlier intervention, then the tears were not merely entertainment, they were the price of a message that could save lives. Even the small domestic details, like an edible cascade on the dessert table, feel almost surreal beside the gravity of a diagnosis, as if the show is reminding everyone that life insists on continuing, decorated, sweetened, and terrifyingly fragile, all at once. Everyone's calling Ted honest, but that wasn't honesty. That was weaponized gossip with holiday timing. Carlton has once again discovered the miraculous healing power of a convenient excuse. At this point, the character's defining trait is not charm, wit, or even accountability. It is the reliable ability to sidestep consequences with the practiced ease of someone who has never met a mess. He could not conveniently reframe as someone else's problem. Meanwhile, the episode's emotional core arrives with Anita and June, whose scenes lean so unapologetically into grief and tenderness that resisting them would require either a heart of stone or the attention span of a soap villain mid-monologue. The writing understands exactly what it is doing here. It slows down, it lets the pain breathe, and it dares the audience to pretend the tears are not earned. June and the kids deliver the kind of quiet devastation that reminds everyone why melodrama works when it is anchored in sincerity. Then there is Ted, still campaigning for redemption, apparently by choosing the most destructive route available. The decision to approach Nicole with a claim as explosive as Vernon is having an affair, while lacking proof and relying on secondhand poison, is not honesty. It is recklessness dressed up as moral clarity. If the goal is to stop keeping secrets, the obvious solution is not to outsource rumor distribution to Nicole and call it transparency. It is especially baffling when the source is Leslie, because repeating anything Leslie says is less a character choice and more a public demonstration of gullibility. And Leslie is not merely untrustworthy, Leslie is narratively engineered to be untrustworthy. Treating her as a credible messenger is the kind of mistake that does not just backfire, it detonates. The inevitable result is painfully predictable. When the truth surfaces about why Vernon and Sharon were meeting, Leslie will not look clever, she will look exposed. Then, later, when Anita rings the bell and announces the Dupree Foundation will fully fund the Barbara Mitchell Free Clinic, the humiliation will land again, another moment designed to remind certain people that manipulation has a shelf life. Ted's timing deserves its own award, though not the kind displayed on a mantle. Of all the ways to darken Nicole's doorstep, choosing a holiday moment to drop unverified accusations about her father is a masterclass in self-sabotage. It reads less like love and more like someone trying to prove devotion by setting a fire and offering to help fan the flames. Any fantasy that this wins Nicole back is not optimism, it is delusion. After this, the relationship is not strained. It is functionally demolished. If votes are being counted, Dummy of the Year is not even competitive. What makes it worse is the broader character drift. Ted has not simply made a bad decision. He has been rewritten into someone weak, disloyal, and startlingly impressionable. Passing gossip from Leslie does not make him look brave or principled. It makes him look careless and, frankly, dim. The episode does not just show him making a mistake, it shows him becoming the mistake. Still, the hour is not without its bright spots. Tamara Tooney is poised to dominate this storyline with the kind of precision that turns soap material into awards bait. If the plot is going to spiral, and it will, at least there is an actor ready to make the descent look elegant. Kat, too, offers a rare and much-needed glimpse of restraint. The version of Kat who walks into her brother's house, declines to escalate with Eva, and simply spends time with family is the version that should have been on screen all along. Ignoring Eva is not weakness, it is discipline. The episode practically begs her to keep that energy, less aggression, more class, fewer confrontations performed like a sport. Even the lighter beats land. Chelsea and Naomi's mutual irritation around the Cascade commercial provides the kind of petty realism that soaps do best. Those small, sharp looks that say more than dialogue ever could. It is domestic comedy with a side of character insight, and it works. Finally, Anita's decision to tell her sisters about her diagnosis carries weight beyond plot mechanics. The breast cancer revelation and the confusion around double or triple terminology adds a layer of vulnerability that shifts the household dynamics instantly. It also sets up the inevitable emotional aftershock when Vernon learns the full truth at the doctor's office. Whatever anyone thinks they are doing on the side, reality has a way of rearranging priorities. If anyone believes Vernon will stay distracted once Anita's story is laid bare, they are not watching the same marriage, or the same man. And Sharon, if an affair is truly on the table, the social consequences should be just as real as the romantic ones. Loyalty in these circles is not a suggestion, it is the admission price. If Sharon crossed that line, she would not deserve quiet forgiveness. She would deserve the kind of removal that makes a statement. So yes, the episode delivers. Heartbreak where it counts, restraint where it is rare, and one spectacularly ill-advised choice from Ted that manages to ruin a holiday, a reputation, and any lingering hope of reconciliation in a single stroke. The only mystery left is not whether this will implode. It is how long it will take before everyone stops pretending Leslie's words are anything but a trap. Everyone thinks the scandal is the rumor. No. The scandal is how fast Ted weaponized it. This episode clearly arrived with one objective: to emotionally throttle the audience for a full hour, then stand there looking proud of itself. And it succeeded. The result is a surprisingly effective blend of holiday warmth and soap operatic sabotage, complete with tears, traditions, and one man determined to prove that critical thinking is purely optional. Anita's storyline is the emotional center, and it lands hard. The diagnosis reveal, delivered with the kind of quiet dread that drains the room, turns her fear into the audience's fear. The point is not simply illness as plot device. It is the sudden awareness that tradition, comfort, and normal can end without permission. Anita's instinct to make every remaining moment beautiful is not sentimental, it is lucid. It reframes the entire holiday episode as a fragile celebration rather than a decorative backdrop. Naturally, this level of sincerity required compensation, so the episode also provided a walking rumor grenade. And yes, the holiday setting deserves credit. The tree trimming, the gathering, the music at the piano, the emphasis on family togetherness, this is classic soap craftsmanship. Holidays used to matter in these stories because they forced characters into rooms together, exposed fractures, and made love look like effort instead of a slogan. That tradition returns here, and it works. The joy feels earned precisely because grief is circling the perimeter. June's material adds the kind of emotional counterweight the hour needed. The decision to spend time with her sister, the presence of kids, the arc toward forgiveness. It is domestic and grounded, which, given the surrounding chaos, reads as almost rebellious. The episode understands that reconciliation is not dramatic because it is loud. It is dramatic because it is difficult. Then comes Ted, who spends the hour demonstrating an extraordinary talent for self-sabotage. The emerging consensus is simple. Ted's current mission is to humble Nicole, to take her down a few pegs after the heat he received from her family. If that is the strategy, it is petty. If it is unconscious revenge disguised as concern, it is worse. Either way, the behavior has the unmistakable scent of a man trying to reclaim power by destabilizing someone else's holiday. The centerpiece of his latest performance is rumor delivery, taking a claim about Vernon, fed through Leslie and echoed by Dana, and sprinting to Nicole with it like a public service announcement. No verification, no direct conversation with Vernon, no attempt to distinguish between observation and assumption, just a straight-line march from "someone said" to "let's ruin Christmas." There is also the small logistical mystery of how Ted even gains access to Nicole's home so easily, which only adds to the impression of a man who moves through boundaries the way he moves through facts, as if they are suggestions. The logic offered in defense of the choice is equally bleak. Nicole would have been angry if Ted knew anything and did not tell her. Fine. That argument might hold if anything meant credible information. What was delivered here was not a warning. It was a weaponized guess. And if the claim proves false, as it almost certainly will, Ted is not merely reckless. He is responsible for igniting conflict based on hearsay, setting Nicole up for humiliation, and forcing Vernon into a mess he did not create. The episode makes it painfully clear that Vernon and Sharon are not having an affair. The insistence is emphatic. The rumor is false, the outrage is misdirected, and Ted is being played. Leslie and Dana handle him with alarming ease, and Ted complies with the enthusiasm of someone delighted to outsource his judgment. It is especially rich that he dismisses Kat entirely, yet treats Dana's ear-hustling as courtroom testimony. Selective skepticism is not discernment. It is bias with a smug haircut. If there is a moral here, it is not subtle. Never repeat information without facts or evidence. Ted, however, appears determined to treat this as optional guidance rather than a foundational rule of adulthood. The end result is predictable. Nicole will not accept "Leslie said so" as a respectable source, and Ted will be left clutching the wreckage of his own credibility. Meanwhile, the hour still finds space for lighter conflict. Jacob and Naomi's petty fight, resolved by the reveal of the real gift, offers a brief, effective palate cleanser. And Eva receives her due as the prettiest and classiest presence in the room, an observation that lands even harder when contrasted with Ted's ongoing transformation into a man best suited for a corner chair and a supervised silence. Overall, the episode is loaded, but in a way that works. Genuine emotion anchored by Anita, holiday warmth structured through family traditions, and a controlled injection of chaos via Ted's astonishing gullibility. The tragedy is not that rumors exist in a soap. The tragedy is that Ted insists on delivering them with the confidence of a man who has never been introduced to proof. Ted isn't confused. He's doing something worse. He's helping liars do their job. Smitty and Martin's Christmas tree decorating interlude lands exactly where it was designed to, straight in the tear ducts, with enough warmth to make even the most jaded viewer briefly forget this is a soap opera and not a holiday commercial. The decorating contest concept is simple, wholesome, and, of course, immediately surrounded by chaos, because serenity is apparently outlawed in this universe. And then there is Ted. Ted has apparently mistaken earning goodwill for speed-running character assassination. In an episode already heavy with emotion, he chooses this moment to sprint to Nicole and repeat gossip as if hearsay is a verified affidavit. The claim? That Vernon is having an affair that does not even appear to exist, supported by nothing more than the kind of information that thrives in the dark corners of manipulation, because naturally the source is Leslie or Dana, a person whose relationship with truth has always been flexible. Yet Ted, in a stunning display of judgment, absorbs the lie whole and then serves it to Nicole with confidence. The strategy is impressive in its self-sabotage. Take the least reliable narrator available, accept the story without facts, then deliver it to the one person most likely to be devastated by it. If the goal was to ensure Nicole's resentment, this is masterful work. The result is predictable. Nicole will not simply be upset about the rumor, she will be furious that Ted helped weaponize it, especially when it becomes obvious where he got it. There is a particular kind of betrayal that comes from being handed poison by someone who claims to care. And Ted leans into that specialty like it is a personal brand. At a certain point, the question stops being, why would he do this? And becomes, how is he still allowed to speak without supervision? Meanwhile, the episode's emotional core does not rely on Ted's chaos at all. June's sister arriving delivers a sincere punch, and the June and Regina moments hit the audience precisely where the writers intended. The hour becomes a proper tearjerker. Happy tears, sad tears, and the kind of heavy, lingering sadness that soaps use as currency. Multiple scenes are calibrated to produce that eyes-sweating effect, and they succeed. Then the cancer storyline arrives with the subtlety of a freight train. Anita's diagnosis raises the inevitable question: is this a serious long-term arc or a narrative exit ramp disguised as medical tragedy? The staging and doctor's description feel designed to push urgency and dread, effective for drama, but also unavoidably sensitive given what cancer means outside a script. If there is a redeeming purpose here, it is the clear nudge toward annual screenings and responsible follow-up care for everyone, not just women. That message is the only part of the storyline that should ever be uncomplicated. As for the rest, the episode essentially splits into two productions running in parallel, one committed to tenderness and family intimacy, the other devoted to watching Ted ignite his own future with a match he borrowed from professional liars. The holiday warmth works. The emotional reunions work. The health storyline is painful but potentially meaningful. Ted's conduct, however, is the final straw. Any hope of reconciliation with Nicole becomes less a romantic possibility and more a case study in why consequences exist. Stop praising Ted for stepping up. The bar is in the basement and he still trips over it. Smitty delivered an actually lovely Christmas surprise, the kind that briefly convinces the audience this town is capable of warmth without strings attached. And then Ted appears, performing his signature magic trick. The moment sympathy starts to form, it evaporates under the heat of his own incompetence as both man and father. Apologizing for Kat being with her family at a tree trimming, at her full brother's house no less, lands exactly where it should, in the bin labeled performative guilt with a side of control. Kat's mere presence is not a disruption, especially considering she managed not to ignite anything with Eva this time. The real disruption is Ted's constant need to make normal family moments sound like trespassing. Meanwhile, Naomi proved she can be genuinely entertaining when she isn't busy radiating permanent outrage. The stunt she pulled on her sister was hilariously executed. Even if the same household still can't explain why Naomi stays perpetually furious with Jacob, shifting moods as if emotional stability were an optional add-on. Speaking of Jacob, even the smallest touches, like the cute monkey and the striking gesture behind it, managed to bring more charm and intention than some of the humans do. And for the self-appointed gatekeepers now scrambling for theories, Vernon has confirmed the mystery is not an affair, which leaves the obvious possibilities. Some kind of planned surprise, perhaps folded into a Christmas gift, because not every secret needs to be sweaty and scandalous to keep the plot moving. On the heavier side, Anita's cancer diagnosis is grim, yes, but the writing finally shows discipline and purpose. The holidays are exactly when devastating news often drops, and the storyline is doing what television rarely bothers to do well: educate without turning into a lecture. The doctor's instruction to record details was a smart, humane detail. Bringing Anita in to tell her face-to-face rather than over the phone was the bare minimum of decency, and it mattered. A diagnosis can flatten even the strongest person, and the portrayal has been emotional enough to leave few dry eyes, especially for anyone who knows the stomach-drop terror of an abnormal mammogram and the relief of a negative result, or the even sharper reality that early detection through routine screenings is what keeps people alive. If the goal is awareness, this is how it's done. Not with melodramatic speeches, but with a storyline that could plausibly push someone toward getting checked. The episode's emotional weight didn't stop there. Tyrell forgiving June added another flood of sentiment, because nothing says holiday programming like pain, grace, and the occasional reminder that people can change, at least long enough for the next crisis. And then there's that line, "I came because I heard Kat wasn't coming," which is the kind of unnecessary honesty that should have remained a private thought. It wasn't clever, it wasn't cute. It was simply rude with good lighting. Still, Kat showing up at Martin's house was satisfying, particularly for the instant effect on Eva's expression, which dropped like a curtain the moment the room's power dynamics shifted. Ted did manage one minor step forward by finally standing up to Leslie. Progress, albeit slow and fragile, though the practical advice remains. Keep a safe distance, because getting too close is how Leslie keeps slipping into the frame and rewriting the moment. And Leslie's habit of running her mouth with wrong information is setting up a public embarrassment that feels richly deserved. Of course, A soap never meets a stable family tree it can't set on fire. So the speculation writes itself. What if Kat isn't Ted's biological daughter at all, and Nicole hid an affair pregnancy behind Ted's name, leaving Kat to carry the fallout and the resentment when the truth surfaces? It would be messy, it would be cruel, and it would be exactly the kind of good drama this genre treats as a holiday centerpiece. Romance isn't escaping scrutiny either. Tomas reads as a social climber dressed in charm, treating Kat as the connection and the accessory, arm candy with a keycard, because the real love interest appears to be life behind the gates, dinner at the country club, and the status that comes with it. And the most baffling emotional math still sits with Kat herself. The capacity to forgive Tomas while withholding forgiveness from her own father, or even Eva, suggests a moral compass that spins according to convenience rather than principle. Finally, the town's newest coping mechanism deserves a mention: the so-called Vernon and Anita challenge, where couples try out impossibly sappy declarations on each other, as if sheer sentiment can outvote reality. It's sweet in theory, slightly ridiculous in practice, and perfectly on brand for a show that insists heartbreak and holiday cheer should always share the same room. Let's stop pretending Danny and Bill is romantic. It's a masterclass in rewarding disrespect. The campaign to reunite Danny and Bill is, at best, a bold endorsement of marital amnesia, and, at worst, a celebration of disrespect dressed up as romance. Bill got married, and the proposed solution is to drag him back to the woman he left, as though vows are merely decorative. Why stop there? Should the wedding photos be repurposed as kindling for the next grand reconciliation scene? Still, this is precisely the sort of moral gymnastics that keeps Beyond the Gates deliciously over-caffeinated. Glossy, chaotic, and proudly committed to the kind of drama that fuels successful soap operas. The appetite for secrets from the beautiful people of Fairmont Crest is understandable. The show is built to reward nosiness, and it delivers with a wink, a smirk, and a steady drip of scandal. Andre, meanwhile, emerges as the rare character who inspires unqualified devotion, apparently perfect in every way, even while Bill is acknowledged as the more personally appealing option. It is an impressive level of emotional multitasking. Bill remains the preferred type, yet Andre is crowned the ideal partner, with the firm demand that he and Danny remain together indefinitely. Of course, no proper viewing experience is complete without the fantasy of settling into Ophie jeans with chicory coffee, waiting for June to complete the breakfast order, and reserving seats like this is less a television show and more a civic event. Then there is Nicole dating Carlton, an arrangement that lands not as daring or romantic, but as distinctly creepy. An unflattering note in a series that already has plenty of intentional discomfort. And if the romance needs scrutiny, the supposed secrecy around Sharon and Vernon demands it even more. Sharon lies about speaking to a telemarketer. Another woman presses for the truth, and later Sharon apparently confides in her, prompting Vernon to ask whether she can be trusted not to tell Anita. If cheating is the premise, the logic collapses immediately. Involving someone close to Anita is not strategy. It is self-sabotage with better lighting. The situation is repeatedly asked to make sense, because it doesn't. Secrecy does not improve by adding witnesses. Yet the final judgment remains stubbornly cautious. Vernon is still believed not to be cheating, even as the narrative insists on staging every moment to look exactly like he is.